Now let's recap on some of the stories that we've been tracking here on the Full View. A meeting of the Southern African Development Community, or SADC, the regional bloc, resolving to send a technical team to assess the situation in Mozambique. We've been reporting about this now. In an interview aired this week, Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa has said the unanimous agreement is testimony to unity prevailing among the states. He said an attack on Mozambique is an attack on the SADC. A South African was killed in a brutal attack in Palma in the Cabo Delgado province in late March, among others. The UN has warned of nearly 1 million people facing severe hunger in northern Mozambique, where hundreds of thousands have fled attacks by a group of insurgents linked to Islamic State. Professor Adriano Nuvunga, the director of the Center for Democracy and Development in Mozambique, joins us now. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Now, you've written saying the situation in Cabo Delgado calls for a close examination of options to resolve conflict. What exactly are they beyond dialogue?
Good evening. Dialogue is important, and the platform for dialogue on business, security and human rights, a civic-driven initiative, is exactly proposing dialogue for resolving this conflict. If you look at the root causes of this conflict that speak to marginalization, speak to hopelessness, speak to also to some of the ethnic dynamics, and also the issues of religious. But those factors, they were turned by instrumentalization by the elites driven by greed. Only there that we started to see this turning deadly. Therefore, what we are saying is the following. Given that there is a clear understanding that although the grievances on the ground are there, but there is an aspect here of instrumentalization by the elites who have been benefiting and seem to be competing to benefit from the low-hanging fruits associated to the gas developments. Dialogue is important, and need to identify these elites in a broader framework of dialogue, which looks also onto the dynamics within the ruling coalition and the dynamics between the Maputo elites and the Cabo Delgado elites towards a multi-stakeholder dialogue for solving this conflict, because local populations are suffering. The nation also is being halted from benefiting of its gas wealth.
Prof, just share with us your point of view here on lessons that we can learn from the continent and the region. There's the issue of insurgency, but there's also the issue of self-determination. So others would argue that if so-called terrorists are allowed to control certain regions, this is why we have problems. Looking at Somalia, we talk about Syria, we can talk about Nigeria, we can talk about other countries in North America. But as I said, the distinction is very important to make.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And therefore, in this dialogue, we think the international oil companies are part and parcel of this dialogue. They are ones which have been pushing for a militaristic solution to these problems, and that not only in Mozambique, but in other parts of Africa. It has fueled more conflict rather than the much needed trust amongst communities, but also stakeholders. So we believe that SADC, after the double tracker meeting and this technical deployment, it has to look at dialogue as the only way to go about the Mozambique conflict. So we are calling for the technical deployment to move away from militarization, but also to tap into the African Union, which has the experience mainly from West Africa in dealing with violent extremism in West Africa, and bring a much larger coalition to look into Mozambican problem from the perspective of governance, and therefore dialogue being the solution.
Okay, so we talk about the international community. We know that the United Nations has about 19 instruments in order to resolve some of these conflict situations, along with regional conventions. Now, SADC's take on it, it's being asked to assist from a technical perspective, not militarily. Again, I ask, how important is the distinction between the myriad approaches to how to resolve this resolution?
That is crucial. That is crucial. And again, we underline the importance of governance, the importance of dialogue. Militarization, it will escalate the conflict. And looking at the dynamics of the root causes, again, issues are there on the ground in terms of grievances, but there is an instrumentalization here, which is economic driven. Therefore, the need for a nuanced understanding of the conflict in Mozambique and a thorough engagement, bringing all important stakeholders. And SADC is fundamental here, because you have the dynamics between Mozambique and Tanzania in relation to the cross-border, but you have SADC as the nearest grouping, regional bloc where Mozambique belongs to, and that can be the vehicle to bring the African Union, but also to bring the international community. So again, it is with SADC and it's through SADC. And the technical deployment is key, but it must have the right message. And the right message is about dialogue, not about militarization.
We really do appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll have a more extended discussion at a later stage. Professor Adriano Nuvunga is the director of the Center for Democracy and Development in Mozambique. Thank you very much.